welcome to Vhannah's Corner. Today I have my girl Nandee on, and we both worked in TV for the last few years. I'm actually exiting now for a little bit, and she's still there, and she's still there killing it. We wanted to talk about being Black women in TV today. I thought it was important, and I feel like she always has been great at talking, giving good advice to me since I've been around. So we're gonna get into it. So then you want to tell my vital Vannas about yourself?
Hello, my name is Nandee. I've been in TV for I started late 2019 and kind of been in and out since. Been consistent since through 2020, I want to say, since like the end of 2020. And yeah, I've learned a lot. I gotta say, naively going into it, I didn't think I gotta say naively, I didn't think that being a Black woman in particular would hold as much weight as it does. I expected it to hold some weight, but the amount of weight that it actually held in reality, definitely didn't expect it. And I've learned a lot along the way. So yeah.
Was it difficult going into TV and coming from a Caribbean home?
Mhm.
Because I had to ask this question before we even get into the Black women. I listen. I'll go first. I remember telling my father, who was Jamaican, that I was going into TV.
Oh, ja.
And
Father God, hold on.
I remember he was like,
the wheels are turning. You saw
Are you sure about that? Are you sure you don't want to be a doctor or a lawyer? And
engineer, maybe.
Yeah. And I'm like, no. So I'm like, it doesn't feed my soul the way, like, I'm a creative. Like, I need to be in a creative setting. I always like loose. I like watching Good Morning America in high school. I know I'm a little weird. Like,
ditto. Okay.
I tell people this, and I'm like, this is what I used to watch. My mom used to have it on. I would get dressed, and we would watch Good Morning America while, before I went to school. So yeah, she was definitely, my mom is Panamanian. She was definitely more, obviously as supportive as she can be. I think my dad came around, but at first, when he came around, once he saw, I was making money.
There was a little resistance at first.
Yeah. Okay. I'm safe and I'm secure in my job. I think he was just worried, like, oh, it's easy. Like, are you going to be making anything? What's going to be going on here? And I'm just like, but how did you exactly?
My mom, so granted, I'm a little luckier than most Caribbean people. I say this, it catches people off guard, but I'm lucky enough to be born to the black sheep of the family.
Okay.
So I didn't have to necessarily fall victim to a lot of like the really strict, traditions that most Caribbean people have, because my mom didn't care. If I'm being honest with you, she, if she thought it was a mess, she just did way in it. So I learned how to cook not because I'm a woman in the house, because that's what most Caribbean people would say. Oh, there's a woman in the house, you gotta learn. No, I learned because I'm human and I know how to eat, so you gotta know how to cook. So the same treatment was for my brother, and so certain things I didn't necessarily have to do with. I think my mom was most concerned with just making sure that I was secure. To her, TV didn't sound secure, and being a struggling foreigner in this country who literally had to stretch 15 cents into a dollar constantly, it scared her, and yeah.
I can only imagine.
So she was supportive, and she still is, it's just, she was just like, but then she realized I get benefits.
Listen,
and then the PTO started hitting.
Okay.
And then, yeah.
We secure over here. So.
Right.
So how do you deal with your struggles with being a black woman in the industry? Like, how does it shape you and, I want to say, make you better?
Okay. So I think, picture this really jagged stone, right? And the more you kick it against the ground, the theory is the longer it hits, and in that hitting and that friction might be tough, but the more you do it, it ends up like spearing out and eventually becoming polished and becoming refined. And that once jagged rock, becomes this nice, refined, pretty sphere, right? And I feel like if you go into it with that mentality, and it's hard. I might be speaking out my booty right now. It's hard, okay? I'm not saying it like it's something easy, but if you go into it with that mindset, with that mentality, I feel like you're going to be okay. Because it's hard. People are going to challenge you everywhere. They're going to tone police you. You're going to be over sexualized. You're going to be, you're not allowed to have bad days. God forbid you look a little too sad in the office. It's like there are going to be things that like you never expected that would come into play. So as long as you go into it with and I'm not going to say a strong black woman trope, because I hate that we fall victim to that trope in the workplace, but I'm gonna say just a resilient human being. If you go into it with that, I think
that's important. And it's interesting that you said that, the strong black woman trope, because
that
always that gets me, and the angry black girl
and the angry, yes, that's what I said. Tone police, the tone policing, yes,
it's tough. I had to learn a few things about myself that I really learned in the last few months about how to handle myself. And thankfully I met one of my newer mentors at my job. I just did an episode with him, and the way he kind of helped me navigate and understand. I always heard this, but experiencing it was a different thing, that the loudest person in the room usually is causing the most attention. Now, no one's going to see the person.
And key thing with that is that loud doesn't always mean wrong, or loud doesn't always mean disrespectful. Loud could just mean you're the most assertive in the room. Loud could just mean you're the proudest or the most passionate in the room. And even that,
but don't let us be passionate.
And even that, as a black woman, falls under so much scrutiny and like this like microscope and just look into the cracks. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
It is. It's tough, and I feel like one thing I could say is definitely has shaped who I am today.
Right.
And I feel like it sucks that we have to encounter and deal with all these things and endure this and slap on that smile even when we're being disrespected. But I feel like
exhausted hearing that.
I'm just like it takes a lot out of you, and I know you know.
Yeah.
So it's like it's tough. But who did you look to when you were younger? Like, who did you look to as a figure that you felt that kind of you were like, I wanted to kind of walk into this person's footsteps as I was entering television? Like, what black woman maybe that you looked at that you wanted to?
It wasn't a woman.
Okay.
It was a man.
Oh.
And I say that to say I didn't necessarily meet my first female, which says a lot about the industry. I did not encounter, and even in my day-to-day life, news was very much a patriarchal thing. In my mind, I'm a gangster. So it didn't matter if it was a man thing or not, I could do it. So it being a male-dominated thing didn't necessarily deter me from wanting to do it. But it's something I didn't notice until I met the first female figure in TV, I would say, female executive, someone with power, someone with hiring and firing power, someone who checks and finalizes the rundown, so to speak. But in the beginning, it was, the Edward R. Murrows and the Lester Holts. Oh, I remember the first time I saw that, man. Fangirl moment. But, so those were, I guess, the people who I was interested in the beginning. Those were the initial people who kind of made me fall in love with the art and with the style and just with the work of journalism. It wasn't until I really entered. And when I say entered, I mean like on an internship level. I was interning at CNBC's Mad Money, and her last name is leaving me, but I remember her first name, Regina. She was the executive producer. And I didn't expect the executive producer to be a woman. My very first internship, and it's a big dog network. Yeah. I'm not at some like small, local station or local radio station. I'm at a national network. So, at a national network, being a woman, and she, chills. She commanded the room when she entered the room, and not in like a bossy or rude way. You just. It was easily a respect thing. It was fluid. It was organic, and boy, could she dress.
I just love that part.
Boy, could she dress.
I'm a good fan.
But she just, the way she commanded the room, I remember meeting her for the first time, and God, I'm not over-exaggerating. If there could have been angels, I remember seeing her, and then, oh God, she was amazing, and she saw me for the first time. Like, she saw me. When I spoke, I caught her attention. It wasn't like I was just speaking, because most of the time it felt like if I spoke or gave some at that level, if I spoke or gave some advice or had a suggestion, God forbid I was talking to Ann. Yep, it was just me and the dust mites in the room. And then the conversation would continue, and not in like a outwardly rude way, but it's just, it'll land on deaf ears.
That's an interesting thing that you said there. Not an outwardly rude way.
Oh, it's never outwardly rude.
It's interesting. The little subtle things I'd never realized still exist that much. Even the microaggressions are very interesting.
They're running rampant, just like Corona. They're out here,
and they just don't want to stay in one. Like I can't. Like it's fascinating to see them, and then it's fascinating to hear them, and then kind of think to yourself, how do I deal with this?
That
do I really educate? Difficult. Do I get upset? Do I ignore it?
Right. And do I patronize
it?
There's so many routes, and you're wondering, what do I do? And because you also have to think about yourself. How is it gonna like backpedal on you? How it doesn't. And I found more often than not, I'm a very morally driven person, and I feel like if you're morally wrong, you deserve to be. And not saying I am the one who has to hold you accountable, but you deserve in some way, shape, or form to be held accountable. And I'm going to make sure that happens. That's what I'll say is my role. I'm going to make sure you're held accountable, whether it's me or the parties that be, right? But often not as a Black woman, you have to think about the politics of things and the nuances of things and whether or not, even if it's right that person is held accountable for what they said to you, what they did to you, or the lack thereof, you have to be careful of how it's going to play back on you. And it's so messed up. Even if you are the victim in the situation, even if you are the right party in the situation, you have to think about how it's going to affect your career. I am one to kiki in the workplace because I feel like when you're comfortable, people tend to work better, people tend to work freer, people tend to work faster and more progressively. And I feel like when I'm smiling like that, I avoid the angry woman trope. A lot of times, it's killing two birds with one stone, But I still fall victim to the you're creating a hostile work environment, or you're making things uncomfortable.
You're being inappropriate.
Oh yeah, I fall victim to that still.
You're being inappropriate, but what did I do to be? That is always my thing. What did I speak up? Was that inappropriate?
Speaking up. It was knowing what to say next. It was not saying, okay, sir, thank you. Right.
And that's just the crazy thing. When did you realize that you needed to be strategic? Because I think it didn't kick into me. Like, I don't think I realized I needed to be strategic.
Didn't kick in right away.
It didn't. It did not. I did not. It took me a second to realize, oh, okay, I'm not just out here just, working.
Yeah.
I'm working because I'm going to get somewhere. Yeah. And to get there, I can't move the way I usually move. Right. Sadly, I have to put a face on.
Right.
And if I don't, I'm going to be looked at a certain way, or maybe I'm not going to become a favorite of somebody that I need to become a favorite of, because we all know it is about who you know. I did learn that it's about who you know to get your foot in the door. It's about who you know to get up.
Preach, Pastor. Preach.
It's great. I really thought at first I was like, oh no, it's just about I'm going to get my foot in the door, and then when I get my foot in the door,
I'm going to work hard, and then the work is going to produce a pathway in which I can grow. Try again, Alex.
Did not collect 200.
Did not collect the 200. You broke.
No, seriously though.
Yeah.
But when did it kick in for you? When did you realize, like, I have to be strategic now?
It was late.
Okay.
It was late.
Same for me.
And I'm sad that it was so late. I was, once again, naively optimistic, because I'm such a hard worker, and I've always felt that my work will speak for me. My work ethic, my ethical practices, all of those things will speak for me. But it's just not enough. It's not enough. And I want to say, once COVID hit, I got let go from my first, you were there, actually. I got let go from my very first, that was my first big time role. Yeah.
And kid you not, for context, it took me over 1.5 years to even land the role out of school. Things were dread, girl, and you graduate, and the amount of unwarranted responsibility I inherited, and it's not even like my mom put it on me or anything, or no one put, but it's just the nature of things. The unwanted responsibility I inherited once I graduated
to not find a job right away. And that was the shock of, it's who you know. It's who you know. Once I graduated, that shock of, oh wait, me having all these fire internships at these amazing networks aren't enough. I don't know any recruiters personally. I don't have nobody's number personally. I don't have anyone's business card personally. It wasn't until I spent money and went to a conference and met someone.
That's always the one. Spend money.
Spend
money to make money.
Spend money I didn't have. Okay? All right? You're eating ramen noodles for like 2 weeks, yo, just to make sure you make ends meet. And it's those moments. So, and it felt worth it when I landed the job. And I remember it was me, you, and another young lady in a group chat. And I remember us saying, we were all remote. We weren't sure what was going to happen with COVID. COVID had just begun, and we had just started. Working remote was all very new to us. It was, we were bugged out. We hated it. We were bugged out. We were like, how can we do our jobs? We can't do our jobs. And I remember us saying in this group chat that we are going to work exponentially hard to make sure that we're seen as assets during this weird. I remember we were talking about it, and shortly thereafter, I kid you not, I want to say 2 weeks after that, I get let go.
That was insane.
Dread, and it was so. That's when I realized that that's when I realized that I needed to be more strategic than I had been. I was being optimistically naive.
You were working so hard.
Yeah, and I thought that was enough. I thought that was enough, but it's that I wasn't best friends with certain seniors when it came down to make decisions about cuts and who was viewed as necessary. You needed a little more, because what I realized also, everyone works hard. So what else you got?
Yep.
Everyone works as hard as you do.
Any more tricks up your sleeve?
So what else you got? I thought this hit the ground running kind of energy. I've always kept up with my work, would just see me through, but. No, you need that extra twang. You need to kiss her booty. Buck her up a little bit. Hey, we can't be naive about it. I'm also a very prideful woman, coming from a matriarchal Caribbean house. My mother run things. I was raised to run things. But so that is not even in my nature, but it's necessary. Yeah. I gotta look at the camera when I say this. It sounds mad, but even to some degree, and it's just about knowing, playing your field,
What's more important to you in working in TV? Money and benefits or experience?
Ooh.
Because I had to ask myself that question, and it changed at one point.
Damn. You know what's crazy? Wow.
Yeah.
It
changed for me. It did.
It went back and forth throughout my career, and it's still currently going back and forth. All right, I gotta say this. They are equally as important in tandem with one another. Okay. The minute they are no longer in tandem with one another, you are going to risk something, right? Because at this point, we're adults, right? So when you're an intern, money and benefits don't matter, not as much. Right? It doesn't matter as much because you're a munchkin. Yeah. Packing on that experience is what matters. But let's face it, we're all big people now. We're all adults now, and it's the reality of things. You need certain kinds of benefits. You need certain kinds of insurance. You need. Ooh, girl, I realized I was getting old when I got excited at health insurance plans. I was like, damn, they got $11.99.
Thinking about my 401k, all of this mad excited.
Oh. That's what I knew when I recognized freaking healthcare companies. I knew I was getting old. But I say that to say, that's equally as important. When they stop working in tandem with one another is when you gotta rethink the situation.
That's a good point. No, yeah,
right? I think that's how I'm gonna answer that because they're both as important. You need to constantly thinking about, especially as a Black woman, you need to constantly be thinking about ways you can up that resume.
Always.
Think about if you're a rapper and your mixtape ain't popping. What?
Exactly. You gotta go back and work on lyrics.
Who's gonna take you seriously if your SoundCloud, if your profile isn't popping? Same thing as a journalist. You have to make sure that reel, that profile is always stacked. There's always, you're always thinking of ways to improve to it, to add to it, to make it better. At the same time, you have to think about how you're going to live. Yep. And I think we especially often forget that. Yes. We have a weird sense of loyalty that other people don't. I think Black women, and I think we forget that, and at a level of self-sacrifice that we don't even be peeping. that we don't even realize.
That was the main thing there, the self-sacrifice.
Mm.
I had to
Mm-hmm.
think to myself, because my mentor told me, he was like, what are you doing right now? He was like, you work this 9 to 5 job, but is this it? Like, is this where you see your future?
It started to feel well, a hamster wheelie.
And that was when it kicked into me, that I was like, maybe it's not the money and the benefits right now. I had to ask myself, like, I'm getting further into my career, and I'm like, what the heck? Am I really asking myself, like, am I really questioning that?
Yeah.
Like, is it the money and the benefits? Does that matter right now? No, it's actually the experience that I need at this moment in time. And yes, I was lucky enough to still have the money and benefits, but I was questioning everything around me. And then it kicked in though, and it helped because then I created Vhannah's Corner, and I needed to be in that moment where I questioned my 9 to 5. My 9 to 5, because you don't work 9 to 5. Right. We work crazy hours, but that's the news for you. But it was like, I'm like, okay, yes, this job is bringing in the big bucks. This is bringing in the benefits, but what am I doing?
What else am I doing? It's feeling very like, am I at one point in my career, I felt like, and I could relate to that. At one point, I felt like all the moves I was making, even though, we were getting better benefits, we were getting better, better insurance, better options for our 401k, better dental and vision. Yeah, that's a step up. But in terms of the experience, the moves felt very horizontal. It didn't feel lateral like I wanted it to, or vertical, so to speak. I wasn't moving up. It was just an adjacent move. It was just right next door, even though the plot of land was better. It was right next door, was in the same neighborhood, in the same zip code. And it took me a while to figure that out too, as well. You think because the benefits are getting better, you think because the pay may be getting better, that things, straight like the Jeffersons, okay? But no, you're still in the hood. You're still in Brownsville. You're just a block over. And
nothing changed. You thought it changed.
You thought.
And you thought it did.
That's something you also have to keep in mind. You have to, don't be naive like me. It's competitive.
It is.
Okay? As collaborative as TV, as collaborative as journalism, whatever sector of journalism you're in, whether it be TV, print, radio, or multimedia, online, digital, whatever sector you're in, don't be fooled. It's competitive.
It is.
Don't be fooled.
There's a lot of pockets. There's a lot of access, and there's places you can fill, but everybody want to fill the place.
Everyone wants to fill a spot, and if you think the person next to you isn't thinking about how they can move up as quickly as possible, you're being like, you're being naive, okay? You're being.
I think that was when strategic stuff kicked in for me.
Yeah.
When we were working together, and I realized our environment around us.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh wow.
You realize that so and so is getting put in here, they're getting promotions here, and they're getting opportunities to do stories here that aren't on our level at the time, and we're just like head scratch. But it's because we forgot this is also as collaborative as it is, as lovely as it is to collaborate. Because I don't want to make it sound, these were lovely human beings to collaborate with. But you forget that it's competitive. You forget.
You forget that you need to find your place. Your place is important. And again, as our place is Black women, we got to fight even harder.
Yes. And you have to. My grandma told me something. I remember crying to her once because I hit a rut in my career, and I was like, she's a successful businesswoman now, retired. And I asked her, what do I have to do? What do I have to change? And she's like, unfortunately, she said something that lives rent free in my head now. And she said, unfortunately, us as women, and then us as Black women, we have to fly to places that our opposition can walk to.
That's an interesting one.
We have to fly to those same destinations. We got to figure out how to fly there. And so when we're getting there, they could just walk there. Wow. You got to remember that.
And we might not even know how to fly the plane.
Right.
But we're going to figure it out.
Right.
And that's another thing that I love. We're always going to figure
it out. I got to say. Yes.
I appreciate that. I appreciate seeing that. And I feel like that means so much to me. That we're always going to find a way, even if it's hard, even if we have to take the route around the way.
Even if we have to take the long way.
And we can't just walk straight like everybody else. Yes. We're going to figure it out. And I think that's another thing that's interesting to me, because I was just reading this article too from the New York Times. I think it was from 2021. And it said that news directors, I think it was specifically Black women, it was only about somewhere around 5%, 6%.
Okay. Okay.
It actually was 5 or
Okay.
6. And I was like, so 94, 95. What happened?
Mm-hmm.
That other 94.
Mm-hmm.
Who's running that other 94?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Not
at
us.
2021.
Not us. Not us.
And that's insane to me. Because I was thinking progress, you know? May you rest in peace, George Floyd, and all the sadness that came at that time and all the rough, like the anger, the people emerging in the streets fighting for justice. And that changed in the workplace, not only in television, but in the workplace.
I'll take it back even further. 2013, the lack of conviction of Zimmerman for Trayvon Martin. I remember where I was sitting, and I remember where I was in the world, and I remember TV changing after that. I remember the lens in which we reported, or the lens in which the world reported black crime, black anguish, black victimization, or just blackness, any form of blackness, whether it be good or bad. That lens changed, you know, and you would think that progress would follow, but it hasn't. It hasn't.
It's sad. It sucks that even people have to die or people have to get convictions that many of us don't agree with. That change must happen.
Yeah.
That's what always shakes my spirit. It's kind of like why did somebody have to die? Why did that have to happen for change to occur?
For something good to follow. Or I gotta say, I think we be mindful, because no one told me this as well. I think as a black woman going into TV, be mindful, because now, and this, I don't think this is something, actually in America it might have always been something we had to think about. It's just I don't think black women ever had the choice of being in TV like we do now. So now that we do, be mindful of you're gonna come across the way you're gonna come across Black Death, because
that's a tough one.
Encountering it as a civilian is one thing. And I think we've figured out and we've learned how to commune and support each other and push each other through that as civilians. But as the people who have to filter it, because when the way we're getting it on the TV and even on the internet, you would think it's somewhat unfiltered. But the way the news organizations get it is the true unfiltered nature of it, and its dread. And we have to ingest that. And I didn't think about that until this year. After Buffalo, that was spooky. And the reason why it was spooky because the shooter live streamed the shooting. That was practically unseen, right? But news organizations got that live stream. We had to filter through it, and we had to figure out what parts were decent for air and what parts weren't. And having to sit through that and watching him go, "Oops, sorry, my bad. No, you're good," and then point the gun at a black person. You're seeing that. You're internalizing that in a different way than the average civilian. You know,
and that's tough. It took me a lot to even, and I had to watch parts of George Floyd's video. It took me a lot.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen it in its entirety. I haven't, because it disturbs me immensely. And I feel like you really want a good point with I really realized that in recently, that it was like we have to report. It's already a lot.
Yeah.
Like you said, to see it on television. It's a lot. But to have to report it, or maybe even have to report some stuff you don't agree with.
To have to be the filtration system in any way is just heavy.
Yeah.
It's a heavy title to carry. It's a heavy weight, a heavy responsibility to carry. The young man who just passed, I'm not even gonna say passed, the young man who was just murdered, Tyree Nichols, having to see that young man, Mike Brown, his body be laid out for 4 hours before an ambulance came, having to see that kind of footage. It's just, you have to be mindful and take care of you, because you're going to be internalizing it whether you want to or not, whether you notice it or not, whether you're conscious of it or not. And it's heavy. It's dread.
It's a heavy burden to carry.
You know?
It's heavy to see. It's heavy.
Yeah.
It's tough. And I realize it's even more tough when you work with news is a lot, but when you work with news with opinion is another thing too. And that's a tough one that I had to realize as well, that news with opinion is it's really tough to work with, because sometimes you won't agree with certain things, but you know what, you got to get your job done. You really don't have a question of you agree with that.
I mean, that speaks to just, things that'll test your morale as a journalist. Where your ethical lines lie.
It's tough. And I feel like I was questioning myself a little bit, like, what are you doing? Like, you're not comfortable. you know, you're kind of like, it's hard. It's a hard pill for you to swallow. Like you're literally sitting and you're kind of dragging yourself up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of just like, again, the question of, is it money and benefits versus actual experience? And then I started looking for experience in other places and stretching myself very thin.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when it kicked into me, like, these hours are insane.
Yeah.
Like, how I'm stretching myself thin. I'm not happy at these
Yeah.
hours are crazy. Like,
Yeah.
I can't do this anymore. And I had to do that for myself. And I think that's another thing. As a woman, I feel like we do spread ourselves thin.
Gotta set the boundary.
Yeah,
because as a woman, they're gonna see you as the caretaker automatically, and then as a black woman, on top of the caretaker trope, you're going to fall victim to the strong black woman trope. Oh, you got it, Nandee. You can handle it. I really can't, because any sane human being will be overwhelmed, will be bugged out right now.
It would be
you gotta be weary of. You gotta set boundaries, and that in itself is tricky.
Yes.
But you have to set boundaries so that you don't fall victim to that trope. It's exhausting.
It is.
It's exhausting, having to constantly educate, having to constantly, and I think what is frustrating about it is the things I would have to educate that are practically obvious. You know, they shouldn't be centered around race. They should just be centered around you being a decent human being. But you don't even notice that you're doing it. You don't even. It's so internalized. It's so and that is exhausting.
That is exhausting in itself.
Because God forbid I reciprocated that energy. God forbid I gave that energy. God forbid we gave that energy.
It's a lot. Did you have a guide with like? So I don't know if I asked, did you have like a mentor? Do you have a mentor? Like a
yes.
Okay.
That is one thing I gotta say. We are dope. We are very dope, and I'll say why. Women in corporate America, it doesn't matter any field you're in, are very competitive.
Yes.
Not us though. I'm gonna say that one more time for the people in the back. Women in corporate America and any kind of competitive field are cutthroat. They're dirty. They if you think men, women are cutthroat. Black women, however, we have this very weird oh gosh, we know how to balance stuff better than the mother lovers in Cirque du Soleil. We have found a way to balance being competitive, but still finding a way to commune with each other. And still finding a way to support each other, because we understand that it's only but so many of us in these fields, in these spaces, in these pockets. So I'll be damned if my cousin, I'll be damned if my cousin don't make it like I do. You know, even if I know there's only one spot on this side, I'm gonna make sure I get this damn spot, but I'm gonna make sure you're right behind me and next to get the next one that opens up.
Paying it forward, guys.
You know, we have a very niche talent in doing that, and I think that's beautiful.
It is.
I think we are amazing in that fact.
I agree, and it's just important. I feel like that paying it forward aspect is so important, and my mom always told me, you know, I feel like, yeah, you looking out for yourself, but who's coming behind you?
Yes.
Who's filling in that legacy? Who is going to follow in those footsteps? Who is good? We want to see more of us. It's important to see yourself, because that's another thing a lot of little black girls deal with before growing up, not seeing much of yourself.
Oh, we're never gonna get into why representation matters in every facet, you know. But it is even on this level, it is so important to see somebody that looks like you, because you have to be able to visualize that you can do it too.
Yep. And I think that's why I loved Good Morning America so much as a kid. I loved watching Robin Roberts. Yeah. She was amazing. She was everything for me. Yeah. She was amazing, and the stuff that she had to endure and deal with, personal stuff that she had to deal with, was amazing to see her always come out on the other side. Yeah, and I loved that. Made me want to push and want to be that, and want to be the next Vhannah. I just want, you know.
It also made you feel that a notable level was attainable for you. It was fire seeing a black woman on TV have an opinion, have a voice, and it be listened to, it be respected, it be warranted, it be valued just as much as her white male counterpart sitting on that same podium, sitting on at that same desk. That was fire.
Seen on television screens everywhere.
You know, that her voice, she wasn't just there as a token. Exactly. She wasn't just there just to check off a couple of diversity boxes. She was there as a valued member of that society. And chef's kiss.
It was great to
chef's
see.
Kiss.
It was great to see. What advice would you give the people today? What would you tell them, like, if they wanted to experience going into television, or just black women wanting to get into TV? What advice would you give them?
Two things. Learn the lay of the land quick. Quick. I don't doubt that you can do it quickly, because I think that's just in our nature. But learn the lay of the land quick. And when I say the lay of the land, whether we like it or not, there's going to be office politics, and office politics run TV. Niches run TV. It determines, on top of the work, which we already do the work fire. Now we have to put in that extra legwork to know who's kikiing with who, and who's friends with who gets lunch with who. And it sounds trivial. I want to acknowledge it. I know it sounds trivial, but learn the lay of the land as quickly as possible. Learn whose voices matters in your newsroom, in your office, as quickly as possible, because those are the people whom you need to build relationships with as quickly as possible. And secondly, don't fall victim to the black woman, the strong black woman trope. And I'm saying that to yourself. People automatically will put you in that box. But you need to make sure that you don't fall victim to that. Lean into your community. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't feel like you have to soldier on and gangster on the whole way through, because I felt that, just because that's how I've tackled life. Don't be afraid to lean into your community. You have one there, just, it might take you a second to find it. It's there, and once you find it, lean into it, use it. It's a great resource. And it'll really help you through your rough days. It'll help you get through when you only have 80 and you need that extra 20% to get and make it through the day. There'll be that extra 20%. Those are my two little gems.
Thank you, Nandee. Thank you so much. This was a great conversation. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Nandee, that was great. That was like
money.